Well, hello there. Wanted to do another video. It's been a few weeks, I think, since I've done a video, but I have been busy at working on the wiring part of the organ. So I wanted to stop and take a moment to give an update and just kind of show where we ended up so far on the wiring. As you can see, I have the three manuals wired. All three of them are wired. They're in place. Wire management's done. And this is what they look like up underneath. This may look kind of messy, but it's really not. It's just each manual, it's the excess on some of the wires. Decided not to shorten it, just leave that extra little bit of wire. So this is the swell manual, the choir manual, and then the blue, of course, was the the choir. The gray was the grape manual. Sorry about that. Then I have this right here. The colorful wire was from the stops. The stops and the pistons are all wired up. I'll go ahead and show you that. So the toe studs I have wired from the back right here. They're wire going along the bottom of the case there, the console, and then coming up. And as you remember, I had put the stops for the wiring for the stops up underneath. I did end up putting all of the pistons and the toe studs up under here as well. It just seemed to work out better that way. So as you can see, they're in place there, and their connectors where they'll connect to the encoder are right there together. So it just it worked out great like that, made it a lot easier. Coming back to the stops, I did want to point out something I didn't realize at first, but as you can see, the metal housing for each stop is actually attached to a metal strip here. This was one strip. As you can see, I've cut it. So what that was basically was a common bus. It was acting as a common bus because the stops were screwed into this metal strip, and it was one strip. So that wasn't going to work. It was just like the manuals where we had to cut the common bus into sections for it to work correctly. So I had to go back and do that, which was really no big deal. It was very time consuming because you had to take every individual stop off. And then as you can see, there's two metal strips for the top row, and then two metal strips for the bottom row that they were attached to. So they all had to be cut into the sections of 8. And you can see here, you can kind of see when I took those metal strips off, I went ahead and marked with a Sharpie where each one went. So when I went to put it back together, it made sense and it went back together. So you can see how that all came out, and that had to be done for it to work correctly. Of course, the bottom row you can't really see as well, but I did the same thing. Both the top and the bottom had to be cut to work correctly on the 8x8 matrix. So like I say, it wasn't a big deal. I just didn't realize and think about it first, this is metal, so that's going to act as a common bus. And actually, Allen used that. They were all connected, and they used this for ground, and that's how they grounded all of the stops. Those guys are clever at Allen. So useful. And like I say, it wasn't a big deal. It was just a little time consuming, removing all of the stops, taking the strips off, cutting them correctly, putting them back on, and reattaching the stops. But it's done, it's all good. The pedal board is also complete. So we'll take a look at it. I put its connection strip on the pedal board itself on the underneath side, where it was actually a set of resistors were there. As you can see, I ran the wiring very similar to what the old wiring was, and just ran it up there to that. I had considered putting that connection strip, which actually the ribbon cable now will run right through that hole to the connection strip to plug in. I considered putting the connection strip actually in the case of the console, but then thinking about it, that would not work, because then if the strip was attached inside the case, then you had all of the wiring running into the case, thereby making the pedal board not detachable, unless of course you unscrewed the board, ran it through there, through the hole there, then I guess it could have been detachable, but it would have meant a lot more wire running into the console, and I didn't want to do that. And the pedal board, of course, has to be detachable. If you ever wanted to move the organ, the pedal board must come off, and this was the only way to do this, essentially, was to put that connection strip there. It fits there fine, plenty of clearance from the floor, and it again makes the pedal board detachable so the organ can be moved. I did, as you can see here, got a bench. I actually built this myself. This organ, I did not get the bench with it from the church. The bench that was with this, the church wanted to keep and repurpose. As I think I'd said before, they were installing a pipe organ, and the pipe organ might not have had a bench. I don't know, they didn't say, but they wanted to keep the bench, so I built one. And it's a pretty sturdy little thing. I did put a little bar there to rest your heels on when you're not actually playing the pedals. So I've got that done as well. So coming back over here, the wiring is done, all except for the only thing really left to do is the swell pedals. I do not have them connected yet, which is fine. I can still get that done. I've been trying to figure out how I want to do. Of course, these two pedals, the one on the far, looking from the other side of the organ, the far left, and the middle one, have the light dependent resistors in them. This was the crescendo pedal. It does not have a light dependent resistor, but it had this thing, as you remember, and I detached that squeaky thing there, because it won't be used. So I do have a slide potentiometer that I can put on that one to make them all three function. As you can see, I kind of took this one apart, but I got the pieces right down there. So I hadn't decided if I'm going to use the light dependent resistor or just put a slide potentiometer on those as well, but still got that to do. And then of course this is the wiring for the light on the pedal, and the wiring for the reading light on the desk for the music. I'll have to get wired up, but that's it. Essentially 98% of the wiring is done for this. So the next thing to do is test it. So I'm going to go ahead and get our encoder, bring it over, and we'll connect the connection strips to the encoder, and then we're going to run a test on everything. So that'll be next.